we saw him downtown at the bus station, with a Navy guy. Had on a white dress and walking through the bus station with the Navy guy. I had 2 Navy guys that night that I partied with at the club. And so I was criticized for that, and they didn't like it, and they brought it to the church. And they had a big conference on it, and they told me I had to leave. So, after that, I was like, when I got with my husband, I said, John, I want to go somewhere where I'm appreciated, where I'm loved for who I am, and not be ashamed of who I am. I believe God loves me, and he answers my prayers just like anybody else, because I prayed to him for situations that, were unbearable at one time, and then they were solved. I prayed to him, and they were solved. So when I come here to Birmingham, I was in the park one night walking with my friends, and I met a group of people, that went to this church, and they invited me to it. And like I said, covenant community. And and so I went to the church, and I have been going ever since. And I love it because they're understanding. I'm on the usher board. I greet people at the door. Come on in, have a good day. I'm good with the people. I'm one of the head chefs at the church. They love I'm a good cook. They love my cooking. My pastor, we talked, I talked about wanting to have a group where, I could counsel kids that didn't have an opportunity to, have somebody to talk to them about their lifestyles and whatnot, that were criticized and bullied, and some of them committed suicide, and I was like, I got to do something about this, because, when I was coming up, I didn't have that person to help me with that. So I started my group. I talked to my pastor about it. He told me to go ahead and get it started, which was called Roxy's Room. And it was started out a transgender group, and now it's grown into other, aspects. We do hate crimes discussions. We talk about any gay issue under the rainbow. And I love my church, and I love my members, and they're behind me.
Well,
and it is.
Fortunately for people such as yourself, Roxanne, you are able to openly identify yourself as whatever category. I'm guessing for you it's transgender, and there are other people out there who are able to openly identify themselves as gay, lesbian, or bisexual. But there are many instances in the church, and many famous cases in the church, where when those allegations of being a homosexual come about, the person that these allegations are coming against, they denied them. Take a listen to this story. You may be familiar with the situation of Eddie Long. That is the 60-year-old head pastor of New Missionary Baptist Church. It's a 25,000 member church near Lithonia, Georgia. It's a city in DeKalb County, Georgia, just right outside of Atlanta. Well, in September of 2012, Long came under fire after 23-year-old Jamal Paris, 21-year-old Anthony Flagg, and 20-year-old Maurice Robinson and 22-year-old Spencer LeGrande filed lawsuits in a DeKalb County Superior Court alleging that Long used his pastoral influence to coerce them into sexual relationships with him. The lawsuit alleges that he bought the young men expensive gifts, lavish vacations in order to have these sexual relationships. Now, in this lawsuit filed by Jamal Paris says that Long used his private plane to fly him around the world, from Los Angeles to Trinidad to New York, and sexually abused him along the way. Paris alleges in the lawsuit that Bishop Long would request to be nude while in his presence, and would request sexual messages and oral sodomy when they traveled. Maurice Morrison and Anthony Flagg accused Bishop Long of recruiting them into the youth ministry and then forcing sex upon them. Now, apparently, according to the attorneys for these men accusing Long of these indecent acts, they say that although Long was a public homophobe, the attorneys for these young men were confused as to why Long was sending them photos of him in the bathroom with a muscle shirt on. Long and his defense attorneys adamantly denied these allegations. And excuse me, I was incorrect in when I said this came about in September of 2010 when these allegations came about. And in May of 2011, the lawsuit was settled out of court, and the terms of the settlement were never made public.
Is he still in the church?
He is. He is still there.
I heard the membership had kind of fell off a lot
it fell down, and then they slowly coming back.
Because they're not gonna blame him for it. I mean, seriously, he is not the first person to do this. No. And what I think what made his situation just so dramatic was the fact that he had a mega church. Yeah. And not only a mega church, you were with more than one queen.
Explain to everybody what the word queen is.
Queen is a flamboyant gay person, or very dramatic. When you're in that, we're not even title wise as a minister or a professional, you have to sometimes keep your business to a minimum. It's not everybody's business who you go with, who you talking to. And when you are a pastor of a mega church, let's be serious. I mean, why would you risk that, talking to someone that's in your church, regardless if it's a mega church or not? There's always somebody watching you, how big your church is. Why would you risk that in sending pictures, flying on the private jet? Who's driving it? Not you. Somebody else that knows that whoever you're associating yourself with is on there. So I just really think that he just didn't think, and for the situation to go as big as it did was, I laughed about it because it's not the first time I've heard about it. I mean, I know of people personally that do that. It's just there comes a point where you have to just stop and think, should I be doing this here? What?
And Russell, I want to get your take on this too, because I noticed that I saw you just shaking your head just heavily. Yeah. The fact that they were teenagers at the time when this was taking place. The fact that they allege in this lawsuit that Maurice Robinson and Anthony Flagg, they accused Bishop Long of recruiting them into the youth ministry there with the church, enforcing sex upon them. So these young men, they were teenagers when this allegedly took place, and they did not come forward until they were in their 20s. Russell, why do you think that they took so long to come forward about this?
A lot of males don't like to admit they've been taken advantage of. I hate to say it, but it's easier for women to admit it because their egos aren't as big as males are. And males do not like to say that they've been taken advantage of in any situation. Buying things, selling it, losing a divorce, anything. They don't like to admit they've lost. And that's basically what happened to them. Someone managed to convince them to come forward. I'd hate to say it, but if this minister had done it to females, it probably would not have blown up as bad. Which is really bad. But still, I'm shaking my head to it because I'm atheist, and there's a reason for this. And it's every time I turn the TV on, there is some major religious figure doing something wrong.
Do you think this casts a bad light, this story that I read, do you think this casts a bad light to gay men in the religious field?
Yeah. I think it definitely has that potential, for people who want to believe that you can be gay and Christian. And for someone in his position and the power that he had to do the things that he done, I definitely think that he put himself and the church that he pastors in a bad light.
And another thing that was discussed, I can remember when this case came about. Once again, I want to correct myself. I said that it happened in 2012. These allegations actually came out in 2010, and in May 2011, the lawsuit was actually settled out of court. That in the terms of that settlement were never made public. The fact that many members of this church, I remember they were supporting Eddie Long. They were trying to say, no, this isn't true. We don't care what kind of evidence you have. There were many members of the church that just would not accept the fact whether these allegations are true or not, because it was never taken to trial, so we'll never find out. But there were many people in the church who said, this can't be true. This is our pastor. These are lies. Why do you think that many members of their church were not as willing to accept the fact that this could be true, that their pastor could be guilty of these allegations?
I just know personally for me, I'm not going to say the church that I go to, but I'm at a church now that I love, but it was a point in time when my pastor was really going through scrutiny because a long time ago, it was allegations that he put his hands on his wife. And, a lot of people was like, well, he don't go to his church. You know, this is who this man is. You know, but a lot of us stood by him. You know, now I'm not going to say that it alone deserves everyone to stand by him, but sometimes you just got to know that God is working through them, and he's going to work with them through this. So I'm not going to say that's the case with Eddie Long, but I know that I'm still at my pastor's church right now, you know, despite those allegations that he's went through. So I just kind of feel in the sense of also sometimes we put our pastors on a bigger pedestal than we put God. So, you know, it's one of those things that we put our pastors on a pedestal so high. It's like I used to call my pastor by their name, and someone corrected me, and they said, you need to say Pastor so-and-so. And it was I'm like, well, we have a relationship. We talk one-on-one. I mean, like, you don't know the relationship that we have. That's why I address him like that when we're talking. They was like, no, you need to respect him. And I'm like, well, last I checked, that his name wasn't Jesus, and his name went on my power bill. So I'm not fair to call, you know, if I feel that I need to call him Mr. So-and-so, I feel I'm doing him that respect of being an elder than me. But it's like we put pastors on such a high pedestal that we can't even see past the clouds that they can make errors as well.
I never understood, you know, why they have to have these big conglomerate churches to start with. Why when you see, like you said earlier, that this way I feel about it. Okay, if you see these churches and you see these pastors and you see these people like glorifying them and just loving them and just crying over them and loving, you know, not believing that they did this or they did that. I always feel like if a church that big, you know, and that many members, it can't be any good to, you know, come out of that anyway, because it's so many members and it's so many people there. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah. It's just,
with a church that big, you're bound for disaster.
Yeah, I don't understand why they have to have these big monster-sized churches to start with.
One thing that I think a lot of us and a lot of Christians need to realize, that a pastor is not a title, it's a function. And if you do not know the function, then you are, whenever you do mess up, you're bound to go through people not supporting you, and then people are supporting you. To respond to what Tavares said, people do put their pastor on a pedestal that is just crazy. He is a man, or she is a woman, just like each and every one of us. And as soon as they mess up, the first thing we want to do is either, you know, criticize them, or you have some that be like, okay, well, you know, he just messed up. But the pastor is a function. It's not a title. And that's where people mess up. You put this title in front of that person's name, and you expect them to be perfect. But one, you're not supposed to get too comfortable with your pastor, because one, he has been sent by God to lead you. And when you become so comfortable with him, when you call him by first name, it's not a loss of respect. It's the loss of respect for the function. We have to realize that the pastor is not a title. It's a function. It so much goes with being a pastor. You know, putting minister in front of your name is a function. Elder in front of your name is a function. Those are not titles. They are functions. And that's what we mess up at. We got the word mixed up. We're not defining it right. It's a function. People need to study their word, and they will understand that, hey, he's going to mess up. David messed up, and he was a man after God's own heart. People forgot that it's a function. It's not a title. Nobody is perfect.
Actually, going on that, people think of the church has been moved forward, so you need to think your minister as like a boss, kind of. Keep that kind of relationship with them, and you won't have any problems, really. So,
I don't know. I feel sometimes me and my friends, kind of even going back to the two boys who were homosexual, we felt that, and you know, a lot of people did disagree with us. I felt that they did a bit of a setback by taking a settlement, you know, for the gay community. I just feel as if you can be bought. You have a price. You know, it's kind of like, and people look at that like, well, gays. Well, if you're fighting for the cause so much, you want to, you know, prove that you're different, and you know, you're not like the rest of them. But we have a price. I just feel, I'm not gonna say these young men should have got what happened to them, But I just feel like that point in the age when you came out in the 20 and you took that settlement, it kind of put it as gays can be bought at a price. And I'm not here to judge, but I did feel some type of way about that. I felt that them taking that settlement did do us a discernment and did do us a setback, because it's like, well, you can do all this to us, you can molest us, you can take us on all these trips,